All right, Chelsea fans, welcome back to another episode. That's right, of the London is Blue podcast. So for your favorite Chelsea podcasts out there, and a part of the Men in Blazers Media Network, Dan, along with Sam, CFC Central. And we are going to be getting into our Tottenham match preview. That's right, Chelsea taking on Spurs this weekend. An opportunity for Chelsea to take 3 points after a little bit of an unfortunate result against Sunderland. We were pretty dialed in on what we thought would be a win in that one, Sam, and that did not come to fruition in any which way, shape, or form. So hopefully our predictions in this episode, where we go through just what's been going on with Tottenham, how they've been playing, what questions Enzo Maresca is going to have to answer, and at the end of it all, what our predictions. We'd like the predictions on this one to be positive about Chelsea, and then to also be correct, unlike our last episode.
I think we did well, to be honest. We predicted what we thought was going to happen, but if one player is a problem, that we can take. We got it wrong. But if 5 or 6 drop their level the way that they did against Sunderland, then something's gone wrong. Fatigue-wise, something's gone wrong. Prep-wise, so I think maybe our lovely audience, can forgive us on that one. Just looked like we just had an off day in one of those games where you just say, yeah, move on to the next one. Let's just erase this from memory. So I'm hoping we make amends against Tottenham, and the 3-point lane there for the taking. So why not, turn that momentum around, go ahead and make a statement, and continue building momentum after that.
Obviously, we're going to take a look at just how they've been playing recently, the changes that Thomas Frank has instilled in this team, and then we'll also, again, get into those questions about the strengths and weaknesses that they have, Enzo Maresca's concerns or considerations, and then our predictions. But just a reminder before we do that, if you are interested in going to London with us, the 27th of December through the 4th of January. Slots are filling up fast with our group tour with XL Tours. So links in the description, or you also can email us, contact@londonsbluepodcast.com. Very, very close to about 20 people joining us on this one across the holiday fixture window, and we're very excited to have so many people joining us for what should be another phenomenal trip over 3 matches: Aston Villa, Bournemouth, and away to Man City. Should be a real cracking time. But look, Tottenham, it's been maybe better than potentially people would have thought. I mean, they are, at this point, Sam, they're ahead of us on the Premier League table, which is not something we like to say. It's not something we like to see. Not something I like to maybe mention too often, but we just have to face reality where it is. 17 points, 1 point behind Bournemouth in second place and Sunderland in fourth place. Again, it is the table everyone predicted at the start of the season. Arsenal on the top, still 22 points. We are 14 points. So it's deceptive when we say, oh, we're ninth place Chelsea at 14 points, where if we win, we get 3 points and we're immediately level on points with Tottenham. After this one, we'd be still probably behind on goal difference. It's a 4-goal difference between the two sides right now. I mean, just maybe general thoughts on just how you feel about this Tottenham team before we get into maybe some of the specific results, player availability, and then the strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, I think it is a moment of upheaval. Let's just put it that way. Ange Ball had all its flaws, and we took advantage of it multiple times. I think 5, including the Forest game where he's come up against us, not won a single one. So it's been kind of a joyous occasion to go there. Thomas Frank's Brentford, not so much. So I think the evolution there is going from a very open, attacking, aggressive front foot football to a more balanced one, optimizing certain aspects that Ange didn't pay any attention to. So just to, for example, pull out a little bit of a stat there. Last season, they scored 10 goals from set pieces in 38 games. This season, they've got 5 in 9 games. So the set piece aspect of it, the way Brentford were really, really well drilled and well coached in it, already paying dividends. So it does look like they are more of a wily customer to come up against now. Earlier, you exactly knew what to expect from them. High pressing, lots of energy, everybody bombing forward, bodies in the box, getting those goals, making sure you're, going out on all cylinders. And this time, I think it's just a little bit different. City found out in a very, very bad way, where Guardiola was expecting them to come up and offer a very low block, sit back and hit them on the break. But they came out pressing really aggressive. City actually made an error and got Ryan Cherky and Tihani Reinders as their two number eights and said, okay, we'll
Yeah.
probably have those two creative guys offering, a lot of thrust. And their midfield got absolutely swamped by Palinia and Sar. So that's the fear with them. Frank adapts. He has a couple of aces up his sleeve. So let's hope Maresca doesn't come out and say he didn't expect a back five or a back three here. He's definitely going to have to do his homework and hope that he has one up on Frank.
And we're recording this on the 30th of October. It'll drop on the 31st. So it's happy Halloween to those who participate. But just looking at the October that Tottenham have had, they started the month with a 2-1 victory over Leeds away. Then at home, they lost Aston Villa 2-1 after the international break, had the 0-0 draw against Monaco away in the Champions League. Then they go beat up on Everton 3-0. And then they did get knocked out in the League Cup against Newcastle 2-0. So a bit of a back and forth month for them just in terms of overall results. And I think when you kind of compare and contrast, the Chelsea team that we had in this past month that we've seen for our team, Sam, and the month that, Tottenham have had as well. I mean, you could argue that with a win over Liverpool, the win over Forest, the win over Ajax, the loss to Sunderland, and then also, a contentious win over Wolves, 4-3, we probably had the better month, I would say. So, I mean, in terms of, yes, they might be ahead of us on the table, but it does feel as if, Chelsea are a little bit more ascendancy at the moment than maybe what you're seeing with this Tottenham team that's just finding a little bit of struggle after some initial success under Thomas Frank to start the season.
It's all about momentum, isn't it, Dan? Last time, I think when we were just ending the season, there was just I don't think there was any side that could put together a 3-win sequence to save their life. Everybody was dropping points after every second game, and that just showed. And we can safely, I assume, that towards the fixture list when it goes into that festive season, it is going to be somewhat like that. Players are going to run out of steam. Arsenal, for example, I'm keeping a very close eye on it. Injuries are going to pop up. They use their 11 very, very heavily, very aggressively across competitions. So I think that's going to affect them really badly. And you have to be ready to basically take advantage of it. So I do expect Spurs to have maybe really good results and then really bad ones like they had against Newcastle, where they played, I would say, a team that was quite close to their 11. So they did want to have a trophy in their cabinet, but backfired spectacularly. So what we should do is just take advantage of those injuries, and try and force the initiative. So that's about it. I think when you have to go toe to toe with them, you have the pedigree there, you have the history behind you, and we all know history of the Tottenham. So you basically have to just do the basic thing, wing and put some really good results together. And considering the opposition we're facing in the next couple of weeks, amazing chance to do so. Barcelona, Arsenal, Spurs, these are the games you want to win.
Well, look, we're going to get our first ad break out of the way. And when we come back, we'll take a look at just some of those key players out for Tottenham at this point in time, again, before the pre-match press conference. So just we'll keep that in mind. Get into a little bit about that style of play, strengths and weaknesses, and then continue the episode. Stay tuned, and we'll be right back. All right, this is one of the few times, Sam, that we're looking at the availability chart. And, you see players like Cole Palmer, Levi Colwell, Ben Badiashile unavailable for our fixture. And then you look at the Tottenham side, and it is much longer. So can you run us through maybe just a couple of key absences that you're looking at that just really change the dynamic of Tottenham team that we're going to be playing against this weekend?
Yeah, I think Thomas Frank did have an update in his presser before the Carabao Cup or the League Cup game, and did say that a couple of them are expected back. So Christian Romero is the big one. We know him, a bit of a bastard, typical, really hard-nosed centre-back. Has obviously had some acrimonious moments against us, got sent off for a stamp on his compatriot Enzo Fernandez, gave us a penalty in that thrilling game not too long ago. So if he is back, then that's probably going to have a very positive effect on their ability to defend the box, and it does bring other equations into it. But largely positive. He's viewed as a really, really good figurehead, and in the defensive line, the most experienced one. Destiny Udogi is their starting left back or left wing back, depending on what Frank does. Very good in terms of inverting, offering a lot of thrust going forward. Still quite young, so will get better. He's also a big miss. Dominic Solanke was due to be back, I believe, a couple of weeks ago, but had a setback. So they might not risk him, but you never know with Spurs because they've done that before. So those three I'm pointing out as very, very key fixtures. And I don't want to jump to the weaknesses too quickly, but the creativity has been a problem, Dan, where two players have got 27% or 30% of their shots, like their chances created into shots. So they're missing James Madison in there as well. And he's been injured for quite some time after, I think, getting his ACL or having a very long term injury last season. So he's out. Archie Gray is somebody who's also played, bit part roles in midfield, has also popped up at fullback. So he's also missing. Dejan Kulusevski, who before Kudus came was their starting right winger, very, very threatening, attacking, creative wise. So also a big miss. So I believe there are like about five players in there who would get there into their starting 11, at least for contention, if not starting, straight away. So half the team out. We've been there before, Dan, haven't we?
Yes, we have. So maybe as we change the conversation a little bit, take a just a deeper inspection into this Tottenham team. Why don't you talk to me just a little bit? Again, people remembering Ange from last season. They may not have watched Spurs yet this season, even though there've been enough games to maybe get a chance to give them a peek or a once over. How's Thomas Frank been getting on with this team? What's changed for them, and how are they maybe just setting up formationally? I think those are the things that we should talk about first to set the stage for then that conversation about the midfield attack and then also the defense.
I think lineup wise, just in terms of the system, he's picked up a 4-2-3-1 or a 4-3-3, and he's changed it quite liberally. But the principles remain the same. So we'll start from back to front. Vicario is, I believe, one of the best shot stoppers in the Premier League. Excellent reflexes. Single-handedly, I believe, won them a point against Monaco, where he made 8 saves, totaling about 2.68 goals. So man of the match for me by far. And if he hadn't been there, it would have been 3 or 4 nil to Monaco. So would consider him as quite the custodian back there. Strong on, like I believe, reaction saves, quite handy with his kicks as well. Spurs use him as, the out ball. So they just get him under press and they ask him to go long to Kudus or anybody who's making runs in behind. And Spurs do that very often. One of their key principles is, if you're trying to essentially walk out of the press, and if it doesn't happen, then you want your forward line to make runs in behind the last line, and that obviously when you've got speed like Kudus, when you've got Matistel, when you've got Lucas Bergwall making runs from midfield, when you've got Wilson Odegaard on the left hand side also making runs, then you've got a lot of options to hit. So those long balls from Vicario will be very interesting to watch. In defense, we talked about Romero. So a lot, I believe, Dan, in terms of what is bought to the side and what is taken away depends on his availability. If he's there, you know, proven leader, adds a lot of steel to the back line. He's also got a nice established partnership with Van de Ven. So it's a very conventional partnership where Romero does all the aggressive dueling, and then you've got Van de Ven, who's one of the quickest players in the Premier League and has recovery pace to burn. So if you try to put anybody 1v1 against Van de Ven, he's not getting through unless, of course, you're somebody with, extreme amount of venom to run in behind. So that's going to be tough to come up against. On the flip side, if he's not available, then Kevin Danzo comes in, and Danzo is quite nice in the air. He's largely a solid box defender. But what he does bring to the side, Dan, is that he's very, very good at long throw-ins, and he's repeatedly caused a lot of threat. Should have got, I would say, 1.5 goals against Aston Villa from long throw-ins, and long throw-ins have caused a lot of issues for us. We've conceded 3 crucial goals, Dan, from throw-ins. Brentford was there. We also conceded one against Wolves. Sunderland led to the equalizer for Isidore. So long throw-ins have been an issue, and Kevin Danso Thomas Frank will probably be frantically pointing to a screen saying, "This is what you need to do," if he obviously gets to start.
And then maybe continuing, I mean, obviously, midfield, they've had some changes here kind of in the combination. I think that kind of ties to a little bit of an attack too, because, just within kind of the 10 role, how they've been featuring it there. So can we talk about just the midfield and attack and how that's maybe changed a little bit as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the pivot is, the engine room is where they make a lot of their money. They've got a very strong. I would say they didn't have that luxury before, and they've pulled out Joao Palhinha from Bayern Munich, and he's come in and become pivotal, no pun intended, to their winning chances. He's extremely good ball winner, very high quantity of just ball winning actions, aggressive tackler, very tenacious, and he's somebody who will help accentuate their press. This is something Thomas Frank wants: pressure, relentless pressure, even from goal kicks. So he's somebody who just enhances that with just the aggression and the industry that he has in the middle. You've got Papsar, who is more of an all-round center midfielder, got some box-to-box capabilities, who can offer thrust in that pivot role. And if it's a midfield three, then Rodrigo Bentancur is somebody who might start as the deepest. He's somebody who's a very ball-heavy pivot, who will distribute well, who's got the passing nows to pick up certain options, but making runs in behind. He's also very good at popping up at the edge of the box and taking shots. Has chipped in with a couple of goals this season. And the alternate option, you've got Lucas Bergvall, who's a young Swedish midfielder. He's usually the right-sided eight, a very attacking kind of eight. So he will pop up in and around the box. He will time late runs. He will carry through lines. Quite an intelligent, quite an exciting young player there. So the pivot and the midfield iteration is very solid. And the two that might start, if it's Bentancur and Palhinha, or Sarr or Palhinha, they will definitely offer a lot of industry, relentlessly harrying our midfield, winning the ball, and then going very quickly to Kudus or any of the attackers trying to make runs in behind. We talked about Kudus, I think a good place to start. So he is the Premier League's leading assist provider with 4. So that tells you a lot about his game. He's also a very high volume shot taker, multi-dimensional threat, Dan. He's constantly looked at for outball. So he's also functioned as a center forward for Ajax. So very good if you hit him with long balls out wide. He can control them even under pressure. And from there, he can get 1v1 and cause you a lot of issues. So he's a dribbling threat. He's a center forward threat. He's pretty good at headers. He can also create. So probably, without a doubt, going to be my danger man in there. In the other attacking slots, you've got Wilson Odobert on the left-hand side, and he's somebody who's, again, a 1v1 threat. Played for Burnley, I believe, before he came to Spurs. Again, quite young, not yet completely developed there. And Brennan Johnson, obviously, everybody knows, was criticized a bit, had a few issues last season, but he's also got raw pace to burn very, very fast. Will get to the byline, will cause a lot of issues with the speed. So the wings are all about penetration. It's all about causing a lot of issues to the fullbacks, and wearing them down over the course of 90 minutes. In the middle 10 is where some interesting things have happened. So Bergwall has played there. New signing, Xavi Simons has also played there. Kudus has also played there. And like I mentioned, just James Madison has been a big miss for them. Just creativity wise, somebody who's a consistent shooting threat, able to drop and receive between lines has been an issue. But Simmons has started there, and it's not worked out for them in the number 10 slot. I think they're still trying to find solutions, a consistent solution in there. But overall, I would say it's the wingers who provide a lot of threat, lot of crosses into the box then. So half spaces, trying to target runs in behind, a big issue. So that's something in attack that you can expect. And like I mentioned, lots of runs in behind. Every team that I saw them play against Brighton, against Aston Villa, against Manchester City, just the moment it comes to the centre back, or even if City are pressing, anybody's trying to press, the goalkeeper will look to go long. And there's enough pace and enough strength. Kudus, for example, 1v1 against Kukureya will be a very intriguing battle for me. I think that could define how well a game that he has in there. And Simmons, he's also featured on the left wing. but that depends a lot on how well the left back is able to push up. So if the left back is able to push up and provide width, then Simmons is able to move into central positions where he's able to orchestrate and do what he's good at. Hasn't really had a good time in the Premier League so far. Let's just pray, Dan, that this is not Charity FC coming in and saying, we'll give you a lifeline and revive your Spurs career. So that's something that I'll be keeping a very close eye on. And I would say centre forward Mathis Estelle has played there. Quite a ball
Mhm.
heavy threat, got decent movement. I don't think he's a centre forward, Dan. I think he's more of a Joao Pedro kind of striker, just picking up balls in between spaces, getting shots away, arrives late, not really very good when he's playing as the number 9 reference. Richarlison is somebody who can hold up play, caused a lot of problems, but he's just gone cold in terms of his goal scoring. Started off really, really well, but he will distribute, he will attack the box. Probably the best option in the absence of Dominic Solanke, so he will make the front line a little bit better. They've also got Randall Colomwani, who's made bit part appearances, but hasn't really had a great time there either. So it's going to be quite an interesting thing who starts. It could be Matistel, could be Richarlison. That's a question mark for me. And yeah, in attack, the width is given by mostly the fullbacks, and they work in
Mhm.
tandem. So Spence will push up, like I mentioned, if he's starting at left back, and he will give Odegaard the chance to rotate. Spence and Porro both make underlaps, very, very good at cutbacks and providing issues. In the half spaces, they're very good at pulling out crosses, and a lot of goals have come from that. I believe the one that they scored against, was it Villa? Was it Brighton? The first goal that came, I think it was Brighton. The ball was crossed from Spence in the half space to the far post of Polinia, who heads it back, and they score. So I think the fullbacks are going to be very key to how they attack and how much thrust is provided. Porro, for example, is the second highest chance creator in the Premier League for Spurs, behind Mohamed Kudus, and him and Kudus combined have completed one third of their chances created. So those are the creative threats. And just the last thing, expect what you expect from a Thomas Frank side. Then set piece issues, a lot of people crowding the far post, trying to rush and trying to create a lot of chaos. So making sure we don't concede from throw-ins, making sure we don't concede stupid goals from set pieces. You do that and you have a fighting chance of coming away with 3 points.
Well, maybe then just taking a little bit of a look then at just some of the things that Enzo Maresca and this Chelsea team might be able to take advantage of when it comes to weaknesses in this side. Because again, I mean, they're not at the top of the Premier League. They have losses this season. They have draws this season, as we went through at the very top. Where are the areas where you've circled or you've highlighted that that make them a imperfect side?
Surprisingly, a lot of points to exploit, but again, we will see what condition we are in to take advantage of that. But the first thing that does pop out to me is that they are very, very man to man oriented. So want to press, want to create those opportunities to win the ball in the attacking third. So if you watch the Villa game, for example, Dan Van de Ven was pushing on Morgan Rogers as high up as the attacking third. Rogers was trying to drop, get some space. Van de Ven said, nope, absolutely not, and pushed up with him, very, very high. You've got the pivots also pushing up, making sure that they're creating a lot of issues with the press. So it does lead to a lot of opportunities for especially targeting the last line, I would say. And you can either do that by targeting them with long balls, the way that we did with PSG, which is go direct, long, and make runs in behind. That is an option if Robert Sanchez can get that right. But it's also being able to manipulate that press and trying to provoke it. Villa did this very well then, where they were repeatedly waiting on the ball, trying to get short goal kicks, force Spurs to press inside the box, and then they were trying to waltz their way out. And the one way that they managed to break the press was asking Ezri Konsa, the centre back, to carry out of pressure. So I do think Josh Achimpong is a very, very good option to start here as a right centre back. He's had obviously a great game last time out, and especially with his ability to carry out of pressure, I would say that if you want to hurt Spurs, then this would be quite an interesting game for Josh Achimpong. Encourage him to just carry out and cause a lot of issues. So break the press, provoke it, force Spurs to push up on you and then try to hit it long or try to get the ball through them. Both options work. And especially if you look at that pivot 10, Palhinha and Bentancur, very strong when they're pressing, then they behind you when they're trying to come at you. Obviously, they're very, very good. But the moment you are able to get behind them, then the recovery pace issues come up, and they're not really, really, I would say, explosive athletes. They're very strong, they're very industrious, but do struggle when you're able to get behind the midfield line. So those are, I would say, midfield press related issues which you can exploit and essentially turn back on their head.
All right. Maybe we could also talk a little bit about how they're not creating a ton of chances. And, they also tend to lead to mistakes that create shots for other teams. I mean, again, not a perfect side.
Yeah, I mean, well pointed out. I think the just in terms of how creatively they're affected, I did mention that 27 of those chances are created by Kudus and Poro, and then all of the others are still in single digits. And it's not pretty in terms of the creativity side of it. I believe only three sides in the Premier League have created fewer chances. And that says something about Spurs. So maybe a lot of issues creativity wise. Xavi Simons has looked very isolated in a lot of the pass maps that we've seen in certain games. So he's not been able to get into that connector role and offer a lot of flux in those situations. So if you can stifle Poro, if you can keep a lid on Kudus, then I think you will blunt a lot of their threat. The second one, Dan, is that they're joint third, tied with us for mistakes leading to shots with 11, but it's still encouraging. You can still force them to create a few mistakes and get some shots out of it. So I would point that out as a genuine worry for both sides in this game. They're also second bottom in the Premier League for aerial duels, which is quite an interesting one. A side that is very good at set pieces, but defensively, maybe you can exploit them. I don't think they've conceded a single goal, maybe like one goal from set pieces this season, but other than that, I think just aerial duel wise, if you're able to get some heading opportunities in there, then even if Danso starts, for example, then I do think that you have chances to go and exploit that in one way or another. And the last one I'd probably say is that Vicario is a great shot stopper, but consistently has been exposed on set pieces and aerial deliveries as well. So he's somebody who struggles to punch, doesn't really have a lot of command over his aerial prowess, doesn't go and command his box as ferociously as some of the really good goalkeepers do. So if you want to create some uncertainty, try those right half space crosses that Pedro Neto hits to the far post. Try to put it into an area where you're forcing him to leave his line, and you might create one of those mistakes, Dan. So I think Vicario on set pieces and just really good crosses could be a big thing for us to exploit if we had a good header of the ball in there.
Good things to consider. And we're going to consider also what Enzo Maresca is going to do about a couple of key decisions he has to make in this game. But we're going to do so after our last ad break. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. All right, Sam, I think I know what your first question is going to be. And I didn't even have to look at the script for this one because I just could tell what the talking point was going to be heading into this match as a decision point for Enzo Maresca. So why don't you just throw the question at me that I'm expecting? And I guess if you're a longtime listener of the show or maybe a viewer of the show on YouTube, you probably know the question as well.
I mean, the first one is quite, I think it has been maybe something that's unconsciously been on other people's minds this season, especially in the last few run of games. Is it time to bench Joao Pedro? Considering how many attackers now are in form. Jamie Gittens has had two man of the match performances now. Garnacho obviously popping up with his first goal. Estevao is Estevao. Pedro Neto, we've talked about on multiple review boards what he offers. So there are four inform attackers, and Joao Pedro is not one of them. So are you benching him for this one?
It does feel as if it is time to give him a rest. I'm not going to call it a benching necessarily, but I think that he needs an opportunity to recover just as much as any of the other players who have looked laggy, have looked like they are not 100% and could just use an extra match or some extra time to put himself in a position to get back to what we started to see at the very, very beginning of the season and what we haven't seen really for an unfortunate amount of time here, particularly as we've seen other players kind of step up, find their moment, find their opportunity over the last set of competitions. I mean, when you start to look at just like the overall goal and assist contributions. I mean, obviously, João Pedro is tied with Enzo Fernandez. Now, Enzo does get the benefit of having 2 penalties in there to drive up his number, but I mean, Moises Caicedo has 4 goals. João Pedro has 2. Estevao has 3 goals. Ty George has 3 goals now. So I mean, so there are players who are starting to find pace, find goodness, which to your point creates that opportunity for Enzo Maresca to say, okay, I can experiment a little bit more. I mean, you would have loved to have Liam Delap available for this game and have given João Pedro a rest that way. But I think you're imagining someone like Mark Guiu getting the start, and then some combination of attackers, maybe even Estevao in the 10, could put yourself in a really fun position to have a very spirited attack to take on this Tottenham side.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting one. I would heavily consider benching him. I really, really would. And especially because one of the major weaknesses is just how much they've been exploited. I've seen Minte run behind. I've seen multiple Brighton attackers get 1v1 purely because of how well they were running off the shoulder. So I don't think Yu is the answer either, because he's not somebody who does that. He's more of a get in the box for headers. Obviously, we talked about Vicario's aerial issues, so maybe he comes in there. But I do believe I've been beating this drum over and over again. If you're trying to exploit the high line, at least stretch it as much as possible. Then you've got to have somebody like a Pedro Neto in there. You've got to have him as the centre forward. Maybe get somebody like, I don't know if Enzo starts there and Andre Santos starts with, um, say Andre Santos starts as number 10 in the way that he's been played by Enzo Maresca, and then you've got Enzo and Kaiser in the pivot, or you've got Estevao at number 10, and you've got Gittens on the left, you've got Garnacho on the right. I do believe Garnacho does very, very well on the right hand side as well. So maybe it's just Maresca saying, I've got 4 really good attackers who are all offering me something. It's just time to play them all together and see what gives. And obviously, you're risking a lot of injury issues there. You've obviously putting all your eggs in one basket, but seems like the kind of game that you can do so. And then you bring on Joao Pedro against tiring defenses, and we all know the impact he's had there, in the Club World Cup. So who knows, he might be able to recapture his form that way. But I'm just speculating. I do really, really think that the best option would probably be to just do what you do. But if there is a trick that you want to use against somebody like a Thomas Frank, maybe get all your 4 attackers in there. So that's something that I would definitely jot down as a probable tactical surprise that Maresca is capable of. If he does go conventional, Dan, are you expecting Jamie Gittens on the left after his performance, or are you expecting Garnacho? Who are you playing?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think that if you're looking at just, again, maybe trying to keep the squad fresh to kind of manage the side appropriately, I think Garnacho might start, but man, that would feel real rough to Gittens after just, again, I think a really, exceptional performance against Wolves. And then, I don't know. Like, I mean, I feel like obviously didn't score in the Ajax game, but played a very, very solid kind of contribution football there as well. So, I think it's going to be Garnacho, but I would not be surprised if it was Jamie Gittens. I just think that for whatever reason, he's seemed to gravitate towards at least, the Premier League kind of opportunities, 4 matches played, 3 starts for Garnacho so far. And then when you kind of flip to, Chelsea in the Premier League for Gittens, I mean, it's, 1 total, I think 7 total matches played across all competitions for him. But then when you look at the Premier League in particular, I mean, he's gotten only 2 starts, 221 minutes. So it does feel as if Garnacho probably gets it just by a hair. But I think that Gittens is at least making it a question where it was not necessarily a question maybe a month ago.
And good kind of headache to have for Enzo Maresca. I think we've all waited for the simmer to turn into like a very, very prominent boil, and I think that's happened with Gittens. So against a high line against Dan, if you've got that kind of pace, electric pace with you, then definitely a very tempting option. So like I said, if you get 2 1v1 really quick wingers along with Pedro Neto in a centre forward position, and Enzo, you've got maybe say Enzo Fernandez pulling the strings from the number 10 position, maybe Estevao also making runs from in behind, then you're giving those Spurs defense a lot of stuff to consider. So I would definitely put it out there that it's a genuine option in this one, and I wouldn't be surprised if I see a little moving around to get players like the quicker players incorporated into the side. So let's move on to the favorite part of the show. Dan, do you have a scoreline and a prediction on the ledge prediction for me?
I'm going Chelsea 2-1. And I think
Ooh,
if I'm going to predict anything, I think the two goals will both have a contribution from a defender, whether a defender has scored the goal or whether the defender has assisted the goal.
that's. Do you have a defender in mind? Like, do you have a name? It
I'm
seems like you have a name in mind.
I'm feeling a little Mark Cucurella right now. I'm thinking
Mm-hmm.
he has been looking like he's getting back into spaces, so I'm kind of interested to see if he can get a contribution here. And I mean, we know Josh knows how to score pretty nice ball as well. So like I'm feeling there's you mentioned the set piece goals, you mentioned kind of some of the elements in the box there. I'm thinking both goals in a 2-1 game, or at least two. So if they score more and we win by 3-1, 4-1, or whatever, at least two goal contributions from a defender or defenders in this game.
That's a really really good one. I probably want to anticipate that as well. It's a strong prediction to make, but yeah, I mean, if I had to go for one, I would probably say that it would also be a 2-1. My head is saying it could be a score draw, also maybe a 2-2, but we do it nicely here, Dan. We all need a lift after Sunderland, so I'm going to go for a more optimistic perspective here and go for like a 2-1 for us. On the ledge, quite interestingly, I do think there's going to be a 1v1 with the cardio. I don't know who is going to be, but I'm probably anticipating a curveball here from Maresca. But either way, I think it's going to be Pedro Neto running in behind, getting 1v1 with Vicario and scoring. I also wouldn't be surprised if there is a goal or a shot leading from a mistake. So those are the two things I would point out. And hoping that both of them come true. So we walk away with 3 points.
Well, that is what we would all love to see, a Chelsea win at 3 points on the day and an opportunity to say, yes, in fact, we continue winning against Spurs, regardless of who the managers are, regardless of who the players are. Chelsea in our DNA. Just know we go out and smash Spurs because it's what we do. But look, that's going to do for this episode. We've put in our on the ledge predictions. Let us know what yours are in the comments on your YouTube. Again, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notified and get involved and stuck in on YouTube. We really appreciate it. Just hit 44,000 subscribers. So thank you if you're watching or contributing over there. We really appreciate it. Don't forget, you also can leave 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. That's always appreciated. You can join our Discord community in a free or paid capacity to chat with us, as well as wonderful listeners of the program. And then you can get involved with our free weekly newsletter, the Lens Blue Dispatch, written by our good friend Sam, you've been listening to on the other half of this episode. So that's going to do it for this one. But thank you so much for listening. And until next time, Chelsea fans, you know what to do. Keep blue flag flying high.